Amen. Have a seat and grab a Bible or get your phone or your notebook, whatever you use. Open it to Mark chapter 8. The songs this morning kind of had a theme. And the theme is this: God, it's not my way, it's your way. It's not about me, it's about you. And for every one of us in this room, we have a choice to make today. And the choice is, are we going to follow His way or our way? Because I want you to think about this statement I'm going to make. Following is as much about how you follow as who you follow. Following is as much about how you follow as it is who you follow. And I explain it. You're about to read an example out of a moment in Peter's life when Simon Peter, last week, we just saw this incredible confession when he said to Jesus, "You're the Christ." And in Matthew's gospel, it was, "You're the Christ and the Son of the living God." And Jesus, you remember, commended him and said, "My Father revealed this to you. And upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not stop her." But today you're going to read where he rebukes Jesus. And he says, you don't have to go that way. You see, I don't think the challenge for most of us is, are we going to believe he's the Messiah? I'm not saying everyone in this room does. I'm not saying everyone that's watching or hearing this. But for most of us, the challenge is not going to be, do we believe he is the Messiah? The challenge is going to be, do we follow his way? Or do we follow our way? And so the choice is yours. It's the difference in these two chairs. And every one of us are sitting in one or the other. One represents our way. One represents God's way. Tell me which one you think represents our way. Yes, absolutely. The comfortable one. The big one. The one that's so nice. But that's not exactly always his way. Now, I want to tell you that this is some of the hardest words you'll ever read from Jesus. And I don't mean hard in the sense of, brutal and strong. I mean hard in the sense it's hard to live them. And I'll be the first one to confess, it's hard to live this life his way. Because when I describe his way, you're going to see that it's not an easy path. So let me jump in the text with you. We're in the 8th chapter. I'm going to start reading verse 31. And began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. This is the first time he's predicted his death, first time he's even told them he's going to die. So you can only imagine what their feeling was. He's going to do it twice more. He did it 3 times while he walked on earth with them. This is the first one. Now, they're way up in the north. They're up in Caesarea Philippi. Let me take you back to the map. You remember from the map, he's way up there. See it, Caesarea Philippi? That's the furthest north that you can go and still be in Israel. Now, I think he went to Mount Hermon because I think the Transfiguration, which is coming up next in the text, I think that's where that might have happened. We don't know for sure. But he's way up there, and it's a pagan area. And he uses that area for them to declare that he is the Christ. And then he uses that area to say, I'm going to Jerusalem to die. And did you know from this text, from this passage, the rest of the book of Mark, he's headed on not a straight line, but he's headed straight to Jerusalem. It's the last of his ministry around the Sea of Galilee. He is headed for Jerusalem. And literally 1/3 of the Gospel of Mark is about the last week of his life. So he is about to go and do what he just said. And if you listen to what he said, the Son of Man must suffer. It's a plan. It's what God purposed. He must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and scribes. That's the Sanhedrin. That's the code for the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court of the day of Jerusalem. And you'll see that's exactly who sentenced him to death. Now, what happens when he says that? That this is the way I've got to go. Well, you would think maybe the disciples would have empathy. They would encourage him. The next line says, And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. So Simon Peter is rebuking the Messiah. And the word rebuke doesn't mean just a gentle conversation. It's the same word when Jesus rebuked the demons. It's a strong word. It's like to confront somebody face to face. So can you imagine Simon Peter just getting in the face of Jesus and going, no, you're not going to do that. He's rebuking the one who created him. He's rebuking the one who created everything that is. He's rebuking the one who's going to give his life as a ransom for him. But he doesn't know that. He couldn't know that. But he thinks there's no way that you're going to have to go suffer like that. And then listen to what Jesus says. And Peter took him aside, began to rebuke him, but turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter. And what did he say to Peter? Get behind me, Satan. For you're not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man. Now, I don't believe he was calling Peter Satan. I think he was talking to Satan. And I think it was the influence of Satan for Peter to say what he did, but he was speaking to Satan. And then he turned to Peter and he said, you're setting your mind on the things of man, not on the things of God. So basically, Jesus was saying, I'm not going to live according to the ways of man. I'm living according to the ways of God. And you and I have a choice to make. And it's real simple. This chair represents living according to man. This represents Peter saying, no, you don't have to suffer. It's going to be easy. You're going to come overthrow Rome. It's going to be wonderful. Israel's going to be restored, and it's going to be a wonderful season. For us, Lord, don't ask me to do anything that requires effort. Don't ask me to do anything that's inconvenient, because you know what? I really like this. In fact, this is really cool, Jesus. You just keep, I believe you're the Messiah. I believe you are. Just don't ask me to get up. That's all. I mean, it's real easy to sit in this chair. This is a great chair. This is in my back office. When I have days I have to stay up here for a long time, believe me, this chair is really nice. This is where we want to sit. We want to do it our way. And we don't think that being inconvenienced and being uncomfortable is, surely he wouldn't ask us to do that. And so basically, you and I are tempted to just stay right here. I think this chair represents what consumers want in the church. And what do I mean by that? A consumer is somebody who has this whole approach to life. I am in it for me. I want people to bless me. I want people to like me. I want people to make me feel good. If they don't, I'm out. Did you know the number one reason people leave the church today is because the church did not make them feel good? The church did not meet their need. I don't find anywhere in this book that the purpose of the church is to make you feel good. I see the purpose of the church is to make you godly and to call you to storm the gates of hell for the glory of Jesus. That's exactly what the church is. And sometimes that makes us feel good. Sometimes it doesn't. But again, that chair represents what Peter said when he said, no, Lord, you're not going to suffer. And that chair represents the temptation of every one of us to just do it our way, where it's not as hard. The other chair, that's not comfortable. I mean, you can tell looking at it. This chair is the most uncomfortable chair. If you sit here long enough, your back will be hurting. Look at me. I look like I'm in a first grader chair or something. I mean, this is crazy. This chair doesn't fit me right. That fits me real well. This chair is the chair Jesus calls us to. And he's about to give you a description of what it means to follow. And as he describes it, he's describing living life sitting in this chair. So I want you to read on with me. The next thing he says, he gathers the people around. Verse 34. He said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. I don't really like those words. Because I don't see anything there that's comfortable. Do you? Deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. So what does he mean? 3 things. 3 things that he says it means to follow. Number 1, deny yourself. Deny yourself. Who wants to do that? I want to please myself. I thought that was the whole goal of life. It's to find pleasure, find delight, find joy, find whatever works for you. Well, that's what the world tells us, but Jesus said, deny yourself. And that's not an easy thing to do. Now, I want to make sure you understand something. Denying yourself just means that you submit every dream, every plan, every idea, everything about you, you give it to him. It means, Lord, I'm not the one in charge here. This is what I'm thinking, but Lord, if you wanted me to do something else, you show me. Does that, denying self, can we still be passionate about things? Sure we can. I mean, we can be all over. I mean, we can be passionate. You heard the cheers a while ago for the soccer match coming up. To be quite honest, I am so thankful to live in a city that has a university called the University of Central Florida that is undefeated in their regular season. I think that's awesome. I said in the first service they were 15-0. Danny said they've only played 11 games. I said, well, if they would have played 15, they'd be 15-0. I mean, that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that, but follow me. As much as I may love that, there's something I love more. And there is someone in my life that means more to me than winning every game every year. And that is to do the will of God. And so to deny self, here, let me give you the best example of denying self. Are you ready? You can tell, you will know if you're denying self. Are you willing to do the next thing God tells you, no matter what it is? Are you willing to do the next thing God tells you, no matter what it is? My first reaction when somebody asked me that was, well, of course. And then I'm like, well, it depends on what he asks. No, that's the wrong chair. The other chair means I don't care what he asks. I'm willing to do whatever he wants me to do. That's a hard question. But the only way you can deny self is to answer it yes. Let me give you an example. Rachel and Joshua and I told you we delivered meals. One of the meals went to a lady who lived in the neighborhood real close by. And we're pulling up in the drive. I look up and there's a guy on the porch. It's a guy I know well. I've helped him personally. We've helped him as a church. He used to work for us around here. A great guy. I love this guy. One of our staff members actually drove him to New Orleans to see his grandchildren. And he's standing on the front porch. I didn't know where he'd gone. I hadn't seen him in a while. I get out of the truck and I said, man, what are you doing here? It's so good to see you. And he said, she took me in. And I said, well, how are you? And he said, I'm doing good. I said, okay, are you sober? Are you clean? When's the last time you used drugs? When's the last time you drank? He said, 8 days. He said, I've been sober and clean 8 days. I said, well, we're going to thank God for 8 days, and I'm glad you got a place. And so we're talking about some times we had together back when he was here, and we walked in, and here she is, sitting in a wheelchair. She's got a little house that I know it's got to be crowded because she had a couple others, some grandchildren were there. And so as we're talking, I looked at her and I said, how do you know him? And she goes, I don't know him. I said, you don't know him? No. Well, how did he end up in your house? Well, Pastor, I went to church, my church one day, and I saw him, and the Lord spoke to me and said, take him in. I said, wait a minute, you didn't know anything about him. You didn't know about any of his drug use and everything? And the Lord spoke to you and you took him in. She said, yeah. The Lord spoke to me and I took him in. Let me tell you guys, I felt about that tall spiritually in the presence of a giant who was willing to do what God said just like that. I was moved. Rachel and Joshua and I, we were touched deeply. To deny self means I live in such a way that no matter what God tells me to do, I'm going to do it because it's not about me. It's all about Him, right? The second thing, take up your cross. You know what it means, take up your cross? It does not mean to have to deal with an annoyance. It does not mean you have to deal with a frustration. I've had guys actually tell me, oh, I know what that is. I've got a wife nags all the time. I know what it is to take up my cross. I've had to bear this cross. Guys, I'm sorry. A nagging wife is a problem. She's not a cross. And it goes the other way. Ladies, he's a problem. He's not a cross. When they heard Jesus say, take up your cross, everybody in that crowd, their mind went to one place. Not inconvenience, not uncomfortableness. You know where it went? To this. They knew what a cross was. They'd seen crosses. It was a Roman form of death. It was a Roman form of execution. And they knew because Jews had been sacrificed on this to the Roman will and wish. I mean, they had seen brothers and sisters die on crosses. They knew exactly what Jesus meant. When he said, take up your cross, he meant you die. Well, how do you do that? You die. You die to yourself, and you come alive to him. And you do exactly what Paul described in a verse that has become one of my favorite verses. When I was 20 years old, a man challenged me. He said, there's a verse I want you to memorize. And I said, I'll do it. He said, it'll make you the best follower of Christ, the best pastor, the best husband. I wasn't married at the time, but he said, it'll make you the best everything. And I said, what is it? He said, do you have a house that has 220 in it? And I said, 220? You talking about 220? First thought I had was Mr. Mom when he said 220, 221, whatever it takes. But anyway, 220? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, yeah, I got a dryer that runs on 220. And he said, well, go grab the wires every morning. I said, what does that have to do with anything? He goes, you need to die every morning. You need to turn on the 220 every morning. And he said, you need to die to self. Galatians 2:20 every day. You want to see what that verse says? It changed me. This is the verse. Say it with me. I have been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. That is Paul saying, I died. But the life I'm living is Jesus living in me. So what Jesus is saying is, take up your cross means you die to you and you come alive to him. And then he says, follow me. Which I think means you do what he says, you live the way he lived. I mean, you think the way he thinks. I just think it means to do everything you can to be an imitator of Jesus Christ today. Another one of our visits, I'll tell you, Thursday was a great day for us in these meals. Another one of our visits was to a man, 95 years old. 95. We walked in. I noticed his last name looked familiar. And so in the conversation, I looked at him and I said, hey, your last name is Demings. Are you related to the sheriff of Orange County, Jerry Demings? He goes, that's my son. And I said, well, that's awesome to know. We're in your home. And I asked about his family. He said, well, my wife went to be with the Lord 2 months ago. He said, Pastor, we were married almost 73 years. 73 years. I came to a moment where I said, hey, I want to pray for you. You blessed us. Can we bless you by praying for you? What's something we can pray for you? You know, I'm standing there with Rachel and Joshua, and he I don't think there was anybody else, just he was there. And I'm thinking he's going to say health or, you know, whatever. 95 years of age, my goodness. And you know what he said? I'll never forget this. In fact, Rachel and I kept going over it and over it and over it, talking about it that afternoon. When I said, what can we pray for you? He said, well, I guess you can pray the last thing that my wife told me before she left. Stay near the cross. Stay near the cross. I wasn't ready for that. I've never had anybody ask me to pray for that. Stay near the cross. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking about this text. I'm thinking about what it means to stay near the cross. That's what it means to follow Christ. It means to stay near the cross. It means to remember what he did for you. It remembers to die daily. It reminds you that you are not living for you. You are living for him. So stay near the cross. Follow him. Now, at this point, everybody's ready to say, I don't want that chair. I don't really like that chair. But wait a minute. The next thing Jesus says is the reward. And the reward is unbelievable. Look at the next verse. Jesus says in the next verse, for whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. So let me just basically tell you what the reward is. You find life. You find life. The word life here is not zoe. It's not the biological life. It's actually the word psyche or suko, which means our identity, everything we are. And to save it is the word sozo from the Greek sozo, which means to complete or to fulfill. What I take this to mean is that if you try to hang on to your life in this chair, you will never be fulfilled. You will never find the one you were created to be. To the measure that you give up your life to Him, you will find life the way He created you to be. In other words, it's the opposite of what the world tells you. The world tells you to go out there and you go after life and you grab life and you make it happen. Jesus says, let go of it. Lose it. Because when you lose it, you find it. It makes sense. And when you sit in this chair, life doesn't make sense. And the longer you stay here, the less sense it makes. Relationships break up. Things happen that you can't explain. But something about this chair, it gets a lot more clear. And relationships actually work. Let me tell you what I believe about that chair. You want to do something for your marriage today to make it better? Get out of that chair and get in that one. Because when you get in that chair, you defeat selfishness. You deny self. You no longer live a selfish life in marriage. The number one enemy of marriage, number one, selfishness. I see it every week. I see husbands that are selfish and demand things of their wife they should never demand. I see wives that are selfish. It's all about them. And then you tell me, oh, well, we just have this 50-50 marriage. No, you don't, because you'll argue where 50 is. Never go into a relationship 50-50. Go in 100% or don't go at all. In other words, give everything. But you can't do that. You can't do that sitting in that chair. I'm not going to give everything sitting in this chair. Why? Because it's about me. But when you get in this chair, marriages come alive. They become what God intended marriage to be because you're no longer living for you. You're living for something much bigger, and it just makes marriage work. Every relationship works. It's just cool how it all works out. So if you're looking for life, if you're trying to find fulfillment, and by the way, can I just, let me depart from, step aside just a second. If you're in a relationship or you're married, never look at your spouse or your partner and go, you complete me. If somebody says that to you, would you slap them for me? There's not a person on the planet that completes you. The only one who completes us, His name is Jesus Christ. And He is the one that completes us. So quit looking for somebody. You get completed the moment you get in that chair. That's what the word save means. To complete your life, you got to lose your life. And then the reward gets better. That's now. Look what's coming. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, verse 36, and forfeit his soul? What can a man give in return for his soul? In other words, what is it out there that's worth losing your soul? That's worth losing you? And yet when you sit in this chair, it basically means I got some plans, I got some pursuits, and they mean more to me than what he has. You're going to end up losing your soul. And he asked the question, what is your soul worth? What are you worth? Well, let me just tell you, as a child of God, and I speak to every child of God in this room, we are not for sale. We have already been bought with a price, the price of the blood of Jesus Christ. I'm not for sale. You can't buy my soul. It's already bought. So I'm not going to sell out to a pursuit or a passion or some crazy dream that I have, I will sell out to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He owns it all. So Jesus said, you don't want to be that guy, and it gets to the end, and you've gained the world, but you've lost the most important thing, who you are. One of my favorite characters in history is Charlemagne. He was the king of the Franks. He became the Holy Roman Emperor, and that was when the church and the king, actually the power of the church and the state became one. And it was about 800 AD that he actually became the Holy Roman Emperor. This man was incredibly wealthy. He was a strong believer, a little bit too strong. He had 400 people, their heads chopped off one day because they wouldn't confess Jesus Christ. I don't recommend that form of evangelism. I'm not sure it really works. But he was a passionate man. And when he died, 814, they had his funeral in one of the cathedrals in Germany. When he died, he wanted him to do something with his body very special. He wrote out the instructions. So you got to picture this cathedral. You got to see the gold. You got to see the opulence. In fact, they say he may have been one of the richest men who ever lived. He was an incredibly wealthy king. Buried him in, some traditions say, a gold coffin. And he said he wanted a Bible open on his chest, and he wanted his finger pointing to a verse so that everybody that came to pay their respects would see that verse. You know what verse he chose? What does it profit a man if he should gain the whole world and lose his soul? The man had control over most of Europe. He had the wealth of the nations. And yet he said, what does it profit a man to gain it all and lose your soul? So Jesus said, when you sit in that chair, it's worth it. Because one day, he is coming in his glory. The last two verses, he's coming in his glory. One day, you will be so glad you were sitting in that chair. Look at the last two verses. For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous, sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. And he said to them, truly, I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come with power. So basically, he just says, guys, one day the kingdom is coming. And one day I will come, and I will come with my Father, and I will come with his glory. And for those who've been ashamed, for those who wanted to do it their way, they didn't want to sit in that seat. They wanted to do it their way. He said, I will be ashamed of them before my Father. But for those who were not ashamed, I believe it will be a moment where we will see it has been worth it all. It's been worth every moment I sat in that chair, everything I gave up for him, everything I did for him. It will be worth it when you look up one day and you see him coming with all of his glory. I just kind of take it to believe that when that day comes, you don't want to be sitting here. I want to be sitting there. So today, you can take a step to get there. You can take a step to get out of this chair into that one if you've never been baptized. Do you know the very most basic way Jesus gave us to say, I'm not ashamed? He didn't tell us to put a placard and go downtown and walk down Orange Avenue. Now, if God tells you to do that with a big sign, you do it. But the Bible gives us a real clear way to take a first step to say, I'm not ashamed. It's called baptism. And 3 took that step today to say, I'm not ashamed. And so you know what? Maybe your first step today is just, I need to be baptized. Do you believe? Yes. Will you follow? Take that step. For some of others, it may be another step that God wants you to take. But this morning, I just know that one day, when I see him, I will be so glad for every moment I spent right here. And I won't miss this at all, because everything I gave up, he said he will give and restore 10 times what we gave up for him. So today, the choice is yours. You got this chair, you got this chair. And by the way, there is no chair here. Some of you say, well, I'm kind of in the middle. No, you're not. You're on the floor. There is no middle. You either follow his way or you follow your way. And to deviate just a fraction off his way basically means your way. So today I've made a decision. I've decided to follow Jesus. And I want you to join me in that declaration. I want us to stand together. You know the song. It's that whole chorus that resonates with me. How many times have I heard it? Oh my goodness, a lot. But I want to sing it with you today as a declaration. I've made my choice where I want to be. I have decided to follow his way. I've decided to follow Jesus. Can we just sing it out? Let's sing it to him right now.
I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back.
So before we sing this last verse, this was the verse as a teenager and even as a young adult that got me. Because this verse says, though none go with me, I still will follow. Because I remember being so concerned about what everybody thought. I remember being so concerned. I mean, it was like every day I wanted to take a poll, see what I'm supposed to do. And I do remember the day when I said, you know what, I'm tired of living that way. Because you guys probably know this by now. You're not going to please people on social media. You're not going to please people that are in your life. You're not going to please people. You'll please some. But you know what? I've made a decision. There's only one I want to please. His name is Jesus Christ. So if nobody goes, that's all right. It's not about the person on your right this morning. It's not about the person on your left, the ones behind you, in front of you. It's just about you. Are you willing to follow, though none go with you? Let's answer it. I've decided, though none go with me, I still will follow.
Though none go with me, I still